Hey, it's Karen. Welcome to this episode of A Touch of Genius, your place to get curious about your personal ingenuity and develop your potential. Together, we're going to discover how to break down and break through limitations so we can shine brighter. We'll find out how this helps us create a better life experience wherever we are and explore its far-reaching implications. We'll also be learning more about how someone else's touch of genius impacts us. Get your notebook and cookies ready, and let's dive into this episode. Welcome to a new episode of A Touch of Genius. It's mid-September when I'm recording this episode, although you may hear it at a different time. It will still be valid because what we're going to talk about today is something that applies to any day of our lives, no matter what time of year it is. But because it's September right now, I wanted to highlight the change of seasons as a metaphor for personal change. We're wrapping up summer in one part of this plane or planet, whatever you want to call it. The heat is dissipating, clouds are beginning to pop up like cotton puffs on a clear blue canvas, and there are hints of rain. For me, September has always been a month of new beginnings because I have always loved learning, and new learning started in September when I went back to school. Even though it's been many years since I left that educational system, the feelings of novelty are still deeply embedded in my psyche, and those are feelings I like. When you like something, it's good to emphasize it because of the positive energy it generates in you, and the ripple effect it creates in others around you. It opens us wider to receive the other things that we like and prefer. We learn so much without realizing it as children, and most of it actually has nothing to do with what we're taught in school. Those are just things to know or to memorize, which may or may not serve us later on in life. What we really anchor in mentally and emotionally are attitudes, values, and beliefs. It would seem that in many parts of the world, parents have forgotten that these things come first from home and then get added to at school, not the other way around. If you lean towards learning more about yourself, then you're in the right place right now. Our mind contains a vast ocean of information that goes defining how and who we will be as we wake up every day. In episode 2, we covered part of the brain's early phase evolution, and today we're going to broaden the perspective by discussing how we formed our core attitudes, values, and beliefs, and what we can start doing to change them if we notice we're undermining ourselves. One of the greatest obstacles we will ever face is what we believe to be true about ourselves and the world. I speak from professional and personal experience. You don't get to the coaching world without having worked on yourself first, and the work is always ongoing as you continue to develop self-awareness. As children, we didn't realize it at the time, but there were conversations and situations we experienced that began to define how far we would dare to go in life. It's up to us later on as adults to develop the awareness around our limiting beliefs and limiting decisions in order to free ourselves from the cage that we built for ourselves. Most people don't even know they're in a cage to begin with, though. My personal coaching training started with neurolinguistic programming, which is essentially a communication model originally developed by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. The opportunity to learn this came to me at a time where I was at a crossroads in my life, sensing that in order for my life to change, I had to change something within myself. It was quite an interesting process. NLP's emphasis on the potential for a person to change themselves can be traced back to Dale Carnegie and Norman Vincent Peale, both proponents of human potential. In the 1960s, California became the hotbed of the human potential movement, epitomized by the Esalen Institute, in which psychotherapists Virginia Satir and Fritz Perls were both involved. Richard Bandler was inspired by their work, which would later form the basis of his collaboration with John Grinder in their books The Structure of Magic, Volumes 1 and 2. Even though certain techniques have evolved a lot since then, the essence of NLP remains the same. It helps explore how the mind filters information, learns behaviors, and helps us build our model of the world. It also helps us re-engineer any of these aspects in order to improve ourselves. Learning this information gave me the basis upon which to help myself steer my life in a new direction. I had originally learned this to better understand and improve myself, but then I liked it so much that I felt drawn to helping others on their life path. Learning NLP also gave me deeper insight into how a lot of what we see in marketing is designed to pull us in one direction or another, because so much of it is based on keywords and sensations that these can bring up. My career background is in SEO, which is essentially based on the use of keywords to position websites at the top of search engine results. So it made sense to me how keywords, primarily through our inner dialogue, would also help raise us or bring us down ourselves. The use of NLP is prevalent if you know how to recognize it, which is why I'm a big proponent for people to learn it. One thing that my coach who taught me NLP, which has always stuck with me, is that it's the intention with which you use these tools that will define if they're being used for a person's true well-being or to manipulate them. If you choose to study this, all I ask is that you use it for good, not to mess with people's minds. Above everything is integrity. Having an idea of how the mind works through such tools means you can catch people out when they're trying to manipulate you, whether it's at a personal level, in a sales capacity, or even leading up to the polls. Most speeches are modeled by it. If you thought the people you've been inspired by are great orators, the truth is that most of them have a good team of writers behind them, and they simply know how to deliver a good speech. Just take a few acting classes and you're good to go. It's probably been about 80 years since some of those high-powered speeches many people still admire were exclusively written by the very people who delivered them. This may be news for you, although it's quite known to anyone who has studied NLP. So, if you want to get wise, keep listening as I'll share more tools in each episode. Again, this is all for you to build awareness. My primary mission here is to help you get clear on where you might be blocking yourself from moving forward on your dreams, aspirations, relationships, and personal growth. So take what resonates and leave the rest. First, I'd like to highlight this week's genius of choice, whom I mentioned earlier. Her name is Virginia Satir. Virginia Satir is often called the mother of family therapy. She started her professional life as an educator, and while working as a public school teacher, she developed an interest in meeting and working with her students' parents. Satir was able to recognize early on that engaging the support of parents not only provided more successful outcomes for her students, it also unlocked potential for healing within their families. She began to see the family as a microcosm for the larger world, famously stating, "If we can heal the family, we can heal the world." This is something that has always been present in my mind and has become more obvious to me since I first stepped into this personal development field, working first with adults and later with kids. Think about it. How many families can you think of right now whose issues translate into the classroom or the streets? We keep talking about building a better world for our children, but that means that their adults need to make changes too. It's unfair to children to load them with the responsibility of being the better next generation when it is ours to take charge of now and be better stewards for them and our shared future. Satir was considered a founder and leading catalyst in the evolution of family therapies, based on her humanistic approach and her concern with the existential qualities of human relationships. One of her primary concerns was communication within families. To quote her, "Once a human being has arrived on this earth, communication is the largest single factor determining what kinds of relationships she or he makes with others and what happens to each in the world." Satir saw a big mistake in equating the value of a person with the nature of his or her behavior. She once wrote, "Remembering that behavior is something we learn, we can simultaneously honor the spirit and foster more positive behavior." Meaning, people are not their behaviors. Yet in today's society, it would seem that people are quick to judge others for their actions and toss them out at a surface level. How many people nowadays dare to dig deeper and offer a safe space for someone to come back to their heart space and heal in order to improve their behavior? The Satir model ultimately expanded beyond the realm of family therapy. It became recognized as applicable to all situations where improving human communication and growth is desired, proving to be useful in areas ranging from therapy and social work to education. The principles embodied in Virginia Satir's unique combination of intelligence, insight, and compassion are universal in their application to the human condition, and there is little doubt that she deserves her status as one of the most significant figures in the history of modern therapy. You'll find links to some resources I pulled from about Virginia Satir in this episode's show notes. So, now that we know a little more about one of the inspirations behind this communication model I talked about earlier, let's start unpacking beliefs and behaviors in order to help you change them. First, a little story that shed light on me several years ago and got me thinking about how I could contribute to this sort of change through my creativity and what I had just learned in the coaching realm. It was shortly after my first book came out that I had the opportunity to present it to a class at the Lockwood Elementary School in East Hollywood, Los Angeles. I was invited by an actor friend whose agent had told him it would be a good PR opportunity for him to go read to kids on Dr. Seuss Day. He knew I'd just published my book and brought me along. Instead of taking the limelight, he gave it to me to showcase my book to the kids. Thanks, friend. So I sat for an hour reading chapters of my book and introducing Nikki Al to a class of 9 or 10-year-olds. Now, in this book, there's a chapter I like to read that talks about people who always seem upset at something, like they have a dark cloud chasing them around. So I like to preface it to my readers with a question. Do you know someone who is always angry or upset? And all the kids in the class pointed to one kid who was sitting at the back called Justin. Justin smiled with a mix of awkwardness and pride as he realized everyone was looking at him. So I said, "Then this chapter is for you, Justin." And I proceeded to read it. In my mind, though, I was thinking, what's going on with him or in his home? Why would he be troublesome? After reading a few more chapters of my book, one girl asked if I could draw Nikki Owl for her, and then they all got in line wanting an owl drawing. So I asked each one what they loved, and I made sure that the owl I drew had a personalized message of encouragement for each of them. It was a fulfilling morning, and we ended it with me handing out some bookmarks. Justin was the first in line for this, and he asked if he could give me a hug, which I gladly gave him. A few other kids asked for a hug too. Justin then came back at the end for another hug right before we left. I will never forget that day or those moments, and I often wonder what happened to Justin. Is he happy now? Is he well? Does he get enough hugs? I hope so. We may all have been like Justin at some point in our lives, with grey clouds lingering that we didn't know what to do with, perhaps feeling greatly misunderstood or underloved. If you feel this way today, I can tell you the best thing is to reach out to someone for a hug. It may not solve everything in an instant, but in just a few seconds it will give you a sense of peace and connection that will help you clear away those grey clouds in the long run. Now, some of those clouds may appear to be deeply embedded in your mind. Here we're going to start clearing them by exploring your core attitudes and beliefs, because regardless of what is going on outside of you, these are the things that propel you forward or pull you back inside yourself. We covered attitudes in episode 12, but I want to revisit this a bit before diving deeper into your beliefs. Attitudes take shape from an inner framework of values and beliefs that we develop over time. They inform our emotional approach to a given situation and our consequent behaviors. In episode 12's show notes, you can download a genius little exercise to explore your core attitudes, which will help inform your beliefs. Remember, attitude determines altitude, meaning how we think will help us get onto the playing field or stay sitting on the bench. Attitude is greatly instilled by our family environment, including what we're allowed to watch on TV, what we eat, or who else we interact with at school or in our neighborhood, because it all becomes a part of who we are. It's amazing even how two siblings raised under the same roof and circumstances can have vastly differing attitudes towards life. But this comes back to how we perceive things, how we let certain emotions determine our attitudes and form our values, beliefs, and resulting behaviors. Depending where and with whom you grew up, you may notice that your attitude is different from the rest. This is why we often have the black sheep of the family, the one who is so different that nobody knows how to relate to them. The black sheep is not a negative thing, it's actually quite positive, and it goes much deeper than most people think, because they're usually the ones who at a spiritual and transgenerational level have come to make changes in a family dynamic. They're the ones who have been assigned to break certain patterns, even though they don't always realize it, and even though they often feel a lot of resistance and pain in doing it. If you feel this way about yourself, let me remind you that although you may feel lonely at times, you are definitely not alone. There are many people who are working through this awareness and transforming not only their lives, but their families' lives too. We have our personal attitude, our family attitude, and even our regional or national attitude. When you start to look at a country's general attitude towards something, you can actually start to pinpoint deeply rooted cultural attitudes and their associated belief systems. Why is it that one country always excels in sports over another? What is their attitude towards building up the individual's human potential? Why is it that some countries have deep-rooted jealousy that translates into toxic relationships and violence? What are they doing about it at a core attitude level? It can seem very challenging to be where you are when your attitude is very different from your family's or your community's prevailing attitude. This is why we can often feel out of place wherever we are, and why we seek out a different place that is more aligned with our core attitudes, values, and beliefs. But there's one thing I want to remind you of before you might feel like you are powerless. How you choose to feel about yourself and your surroundings is the golden ticket to achieving personal peace. We don't have to like everything about where we are, because there will always be contrast. But we can choose based on our preferences and the things that align most with our values, attitudes, and beliefs. This will inform our choices in terms of location, vocation, and community. Beliefs come from the thoughts we have that are most deeply anchored in our subconscious programming, and they are associated with certain emotions. Hence, in neurolinguistic programming, we look for what those beliefs and emotions are to literally reprogram the mind by creating new and positive associations. Gestalt therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy are also techniques that help shift our beliefs in order to change our behaviors. Essentially, a belief is simply a thought we keep thinking. So if we don't like it or it's not helping us, we can retrain the mind to have a new thought that becomes a new belief. Sometimes it's easier said than done, because we associate so much of our belief system to our emotions, behaviors, relationships, and our identity. This is why some people find it so hard to change, because they built their entire identity around a particular belief they have about themselves, and it scares them to start undoing that. They may also feel they will betray their loved ones by making this important change within themselves. Most people fear the unknown, and if they don't have a clear idea and willingness of who they want to become, or trust that they can, they likely won't feel motivated to change anything. And so they hold on to their little grey pet clouds. Since our subconscious mind operates with what we tell it, words are obviously important. You'll hear people talk about writing positive affirmations and keeping them easily visible wherever you are to see them often. Mantras are also a way to anchor positive thoughts. However, positive affirmations often bump into deeply rooted belief systems, which is why some people give up using them after a time of seeing no positive changes in their lives. You see, it's not just the words we say to ourselves, but the emotions associated with them. Emotions are energy in motion, remember. If your energy is associated with a negative belief or thought pattern about yourself, no amount of positive words will help you override the negative emotions. You have to change the emotions behind the belief. Then you can align positive emotions with positive thoughts and words, and this will get you moving positively in the direction that you want. Tried and tested. Sometimes we'll develop stronger negative beliefs later on based on a series of challenging situations. What's really happening is that a deeply rooted unconscious belief has taken over so much and built a stronger cluster of beliefs that we're more conscious of it, but so tied to it at the same time that it seems harder to uproot. This is why you may find yourself repeating certain patterns in your life, convincing yourself more and more that you don't deserve to free yourself of them. A simple example of how attitudes, values, and beliefs are so deeply connected with one another to condition us. Knowing that beliefs can change over time, accentuating good ones or negative ones based on our ongoing life experience actually gives us power. It's also why this sort of work is not once and done. It's a constant check-in with yourself based on where you are and where you're headed in life. We need to be adaptable or else we perish mentally and emotionally, and I do not wish that for you. Once you get clear on what your operating beliefs are, you can start to unpack them. However, it's important to remember that beliefs typically come in clusters, so it's important to understand those clusters and deactivate each belief that is detrimental to our well-being and potential. Beliefs are also associated with values. So let's look at one hypothetical yet typical example. A person's primary belief around relationships could be that they will never have a happy, long-lasting relationship. If they were to look deeper and wider at their belief system, they might find that they also believe that they are not good enough to have a healthy, sustainable relationship. This belief is associated with how they value themselves and a feeling of low self-worth. They may also believe that they will be betrayed because something happened to them a long time ago that conditioned them to feel this way. This belief would be associated with the value of trust, which in this case is a wounded sense of trust that would need healing. All of this would inform the person's attitude towards seeking out a long-term relationship, thinking, it's never going to happen, and if it does, it won't last anyway, even though they deeply long for it. Hence that person's ongoing inner conflict to experience a fulfilling, intimate relationship. It's what we believe about ourselves, mixed with our attitudes and values, that shapes our lives right down to our frequent habits. In the downloadable PDF for this episode, which you'll find in the show notes, you'll find some diagrams to help you unpack your belief system, along with associated attitudes and values. This will help you look at the inner map that has been guiding you so far, and pinpoint where you see opportunities to shift your beliefs, attitudes, and values. It's a starting point that you can dig deeper on. You'll also explore the following questions. How do you see, think, and feel about yourself? What do you like about yourself? What don't you like about yourself? What do you believe about yourself? What would you like to believe about yourself? What would your life look, sound, and feel like if you were living that version of you? As we saw in earlier episodes, energy attracts its likeness. And since energy follows thought, we would be better off choosing our energy and thoughts more wisely in order to create the optimal circumstances for our well-being and success. When I say well-being, it applies to our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. When I say success, this is an all-encompassing perspective. Success in health, in relationships, in business or work, in finance, in personal growth. Your power and potential literally live within you. It's just a matter of looking deeper, digging up those treasures and removing the things that don't serve your highest potential. Believing in yourself is how you create your self-fulfilling prophecies, for good or otherwise. Think about it. How many times did you believe something good would happen for you, and it did? How many times did you believe something negative would happen for you, and it did? This is why it's so important to believe in yourself, not just for yourself, but for your loved ones and society as well. Believing in ourselves is an act of personal and social responsibility. It's how we put our best foot forward to make this place a better, happier, and healthier place for all of us to enjoy a more fulfilling life experience. I hope this episode has given you deeper insights and answers on how to make positive change for yourself. I'd like to close out with a tribute to the person who taught me NLP and got me on the path of helping others within the personal development field. Deborah Peters was the founder of the Neuroengineering Institute of Los Angeles. She was a force to be reckoned with, a country girl from Canada who had taken major leaps of faith in her own life. I met Deborah when I was questioning what I was doing with my career, and the work I did with her helped me tremendously. We had distanced ourselves for some time because once I published my first book, my life took a different turn. I had also felt that the student was becoming the master, and I needed to fly free with what I had learned from her. It was just a few months ago that she reached out to reconnect. She was undergoing cancer treatment and was hoping to make one of her dreams come true after her recovery, to come live in Europe. Unfortunately, she didn't make it. I found out about her passing on my birthday this summer. I was really hoping she would make it, because I knew how long and hard she had fought to pave her way through life, including some of her deepest heartaches. She was not without her faults or shortcomings like any one of us, but she was a natural-born fighter who was passionate about helping people break through their limitations. This one's for you, Deborah. Thank you for everything, and I hope I carry the torch well. As for you, my dear listener, obviously I don't want to end this on a sad note, but I really hope that something in this episode will click for you and help you step into high gear, help you remove the BS that's been pulling you back, and actually unleash your own potential so that you can live your best life. We never know how long we have here, and I think we all deserve to give it our best and to experience the best that we can. As we wrap up today's show, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. It means a lot to me. You see, whenever we create something, we always take a leap of faith into the unknown, and we don't always know how it'll work out. That's part of what this podcast is about, encouraging all of us to take leaps of faith on our ideas, dreams, and creations, and having a safe space to explore them, to build the strength to get back up when we fall, and to celebrate when we fly high. I'd love to know what your big takeaway is from this episode. Tell me what you're working through and what you'd like to know more about. Also, is there someone you'd like me to interview on the topic of genius? Let me know. Email me at hello@karenpinter.com or message me on my socials. In the meantime, take care of your genius self.